Hi class, this video is going to walk through an introduction to EBSCO and APA style. And I'm not going to get into all the details of either one of them. I want to keep the video relatively brief. What I basically want to do is give you enough of an introduction that you can use them at a basic level. And then as you need to fill in some gaps about some of the details, you'll kind of have the resources where you can go and look at those. So starting with EBSCO databases, if you go to our library webpage, wtamu.edu/library, you can access EBSCO databases by clicking on Databases A to Z. And there are other ways to access these. You can access them by subject, but this is the way we're going to do it for now. And as you can see, there's a number of databases in here. And so they cover psychology, criminal justice, education, and some of them are more broad. They cover a number of subjects like academic search complete. For our purposes, we're going to start with psych info and psych articles, which are important databases in the field of psychology. Once I select an initial database, I can add databases, so I can search multiple databases at the same time. And I'm going to click on Academic Search Complete. Again, it's a broad one that sometimes is useful. And then I'm going to also click on Psych Info. Now, if you're looking at a concept or the application of a concept across fields, you may also want to click on databases relevant to that other field. So if you're doing business, maybe you want to click on Business Source Complete. So how does psychology relate to some business aspect? Well, you could add in that. If you want to look at medications and how we do things that relate to the field of medicine, you could click on Medline. And there's ones for criminal justice, so there's a lot of them in here. And Eric would be the education one. So you need to know the ones that are related to your field, and you can talk with a librarian about that. You can talk about instructors in those other fields about possible databases to look at, but that gives you an introduction to how you would select multiple databases. So we're going to click OK. So now we're searching psych articles, academic search complete, and psych info. And let's say that I want to look at racism and superordinate goals. When I go to do the search, I can make the search more specific, or I can make the search more inclusive by selecting how I want to search. So I could leave it to all fields, in which case it would search with the text, the author, the title, basically everything, which would be a pretty inclusive search. I can also search within the text of the article, also a pretty inclusive search, but I can do the title or the subject terms. Those are going to be narrower. One of the key skills to using EBSCO and using it effectively is learning how to expand and contract your search. So how do I make it catch more articles, and how do I make it narrow down on fewer articles? So with that, let's say that we want to look at subject terms. These would be key terms, things that the writer of the article, the author, thought were important, essential to the research that they're doing. So we're going to click on subject terms for both. I can then specify things like, well, let's do full text. Now, if you're doing a project like a capstone or a thesis or something along those lines, you don't want to click that. You want to get all the possible articles relevant. And then if you need to go to interlibrary loan to ask for an article that we don't have full text automatically, you can do that. For the purposes of a class assignment, I don't want to overly burden interlibrary loan, so we'll click on full text for the moment, but do know that that's not best practice if you're trying to really do a true research project and add to the existing body of knowledge. It's possible if you click this that you're then going to miss on an important article that's already doing what you've done or that would inform what you're going to do. We can also specify the years. If you're already familiar with an area of research, for instance, and you want to just look, okay, what's happened in the last few years, I could specify the last 10 years and search for 2010 to 2020. And you can see that there's other ways that I can narrow this search. And what you always want to do for the purposes of this class is click peer reviewed. because we only want peer-reviewed articles. We want to at least know that 1, 2, maybe up to 3 people have looked at this, who are knowledgeable in the field, and who have decided, you know what, the methodology is reasonably well done, the results are consistent with other areas of knowledge, or when they're inconsistent, there's an explanation that furthers our understanding. And so we're going to click that. And then we're going to hit search and see how many results we get back. And we don't get any results, in part because I made it relatively restrictive by saying I only want it to look in subject terms. Similarly, title, the word racism would have to be in the title if I selected that. Let's make it a little more expansive. So now, if the words racism or superordinate goals appear anywhere in the text, we should get that back. And I see that when I do that, now I get 473 results. They're all peer-reviewed. Full text is available for all of them, so you can just click this PDF, boom, you're there. Now, you still have to narrow it down, right? 473 is not too much. Within an hour or so, you could probably skim through most of these. And what you're going to do is, at each stage, you're going to look at more and more detail of the article. So you're going to start by looking at the title, probably. And if it seems interesting, relevant to your area, then you're going to click in, look at the abstract. If it still seems like the results are relevant to what you're doing, then you're going to set it aside and read the full article at a later time. I highly recommend setting them aside. What I do is I create a folder on my desktop with the titles, racism, superordinate goals, that I used for this search. So that way I keep track of what I have searched. Now, other individuals, they use Excel and do this. And then some individuals, they actually will use built-in things like Zotero and similar programs that will allow you to save the articles using your browser. So it's a built-in program that basically is an add-on to your browser that allows you to organize and save these. So I highly recommend either Zotero or Mendeley. Both of them are useful. Having used them recently, my grad students really like Mendeley, but both programs are fairly well liked by researchers. So again, you're going to look through these, you're going to find something that's relevant. Let's say that we find this article, Promoting Beliefs in the Inalienability of Human Rights. Let's say that we find this really useful. I'm going to take this name, I'm going to copy that, and then we are going to show you another database. So if I go back to the library homepage, underneath the databases, I'm going to click on the W's, and I'm going to go to Web of Science. I'm going to do an advanced search. And in case you're starting to go, whoa, this is a lot, fortunately, everything that you really need to know is over here on the left-hand side. So we've talked about Boolean operators a little bit when I used and here. It searches for racism and superordinate goals, both occurring together. And we'll talk about those more in just a moment, how you can make use of those, again, to expand and contract your research. That's really the skill that you're needing to learn. So you need those. And then the other thing are the field tags. So in this case, the author, that's the name I just copied. And we don't want everything by every author with this last name. We only want the things, the specific article. So I'm going to copy part of this title. And you can see TI, that's how you do title. TS is topic. So again, you can use these to specify using the knowledge that you have. And now we're going to search for that. So we get one article. That's probably because I copied so much of the title. This article was published in 2018. Let's double check that is the article that we want. Yes. So Journal of Social Psychology. And what this allows us to do is we can look at the references in an article and look backwards in time. Who are these authors citing in their article? But Web of Science allows us to look forward in time. Who has cited this article? So especially if you find an article that's key to your research, you want to know not only what have they done, but especially if the article is a few years old, and especially if it's decades old, and especially if it's like the seminal important article, you want to know who else has followed up on what they did and done research in this area. And so now we can see that there's another article by basically the same group, Developing Identification with Humanity. And in this case, it looks like basically they have cited themselves. Welcome to part of academia. So maybe this isn't exactly what we're interested in, but that shows you how once you find the first article that's really interesting to you, really relevant to what you're doing, especially if that journal article is more than a few years old, you can use Web of Science to see, well, who else has cited them? Now, let's say that I look through these 473 and I just really don't find what I'm looking for. I could change the search term. So maybe superordinate goal isn't the right term. Maybe there's another term that's used in the literature, a synonym that's used. I could also expand my search by saying or here, and let's say that I put in jigsaw classrooms, which at a time, whenever we were integrating schools and taking schools where they had been racially divided, integrating them together, jigsaw classroom was looked at as how do we get these students to work together? How do we get these students to build relationships? And so we can then put that in the text. And suddenly we see that we go from 473 articles to 1,450 articles. So, and narrows it down. Racism and superordinate goals have to both be in the article together, or expands it back out. Could be that racism and superordinate goals are in it, or just the word jigsaw classroom or words jigsaw classroom are in it. Again, if you catch too many, we could then narrow it down by subject term. And now we're back down to 478. We could narrow it further and we could say, let's not only that it's an important key term as identified by the author, but that it's in the actual title itself. We see 477. So again, key skill that you're trying to develop is expanding and contracting your search results in a way that effectively helps you find articles. Because I'll be honest, if I have 2,000, 3,000 articles that pop back, I probably am not going to spend all day looking through them. So we need to find a way to narrow it, but we don't want to narrow it so that we end up missing articles that are actually important to what we're doing. So this is a skill that takes some development. And again, talking with a librarian about how to use this and how to use it effectively can help you develop that skill more. So you have an introduction to EBSCO. Another important skill is APA style. So there is the APA style manual, of course, which is important. You should have a copy of that. You're going to use it throughout your career, probably, if you do anything else. Additionally, within our curriculum, you're going to have it in several classes where you need it. So you're going to need it for research methods. You're going to need it for some of Dr. Bird's class, some of Dr. Pinkham's classes. And so basically any class that you have to write a paper in APA style, you're going to need the APA style manual. That being said, there's also the APA style blog. It is the official APA style blog. So it should completely line up with the APA style manual because the APA style manual is relatively new. Over time, as we move away from the 7th edition being relatively new, you may see that they update things on the style blog. And in fact, when the style blog has updated something and said, this is the new way to do it, it actually overrides the APA style manual. So do know that it's an important resource for you. Now, I've also provided a quick little introduction. So on task 2, you can see that there is an APA style example. And I provide links to some things in the APA style blog that I think would be helpful to you. I provide examples of how to write the running head. Looking at this has actually been updated, so you no longer have to type out running head. So do know that this was based on the 6th edition, and now we are on the 7th edition. I'll have to update this pretty soon. But it provides you with a relatively quick, easy introduction that can be useful. It provides you with links so that you can jump to blog articles about some of these things. You probably don't have to include an abstract in what we're doing for this semester, but you should be aware of where that would go, how you would do that. So do know that some of these things may not make sense based on the assignment, but especially some of the key things like writing your references and writing them correctly, this is going to be helpful to you as a starting point. So the two key things that I normally focus on, and this is not true for everyone, not true for all professors, but the two things that I normally focus on are you need to make sure that your in-text citations and your references are correct. Because if you don't do that, then you technically have plagiarized whatever you're looking at. And if you plagiarize something, that is an ethical violation that at the extreme level could result in you getting a 0 on the assignment, could result in a referral to the dean, those types of things. So you want to avoid that. Proper citations are a key way to avoiding it. So here you can see the website that I'm using. So apastyle.apa.org/style-grammar-guidelines/citations/index. From this web page, I can jump to a number of things that are relevant to making sure I'm doing in-text citations correctly. One of the key things are the basic principles to in-text citations. So this is going to walk you through what's important, how do I do that, and then of course you can use the manual to make sure that you're actually citing them correctly. When you're doing a quotation, you want to make sure that you cite that correctly. You need to include things like page numbers that in most citations you wouldn't have to include the page number. If you're directly quoting something, you do need to include that, and this would walk you through how to do that as well. Here we see some examples of how to do parenthetical citations, where we have the author's name and then the year for the publication. You can also, if you're citing it and you think individuals could go there, you could do it this way as well. And then if you look at in the narrative, you can say the author's name and then put the year in parentheses. So again, this is a quick introduction. It's not going to give you all the details. It's not going to show you all the variations on, well, what do I do if there's 3 authors? What do I do if there's 5 authors? You're going to have to go to the APA style manual for some of that. So that's how you cite it within the text. At the end of the text, that's where we're going to have the reference section. And again, we have some basic principles. What's the type of information that you're including in those with the author, the date, the title. And then you can see how you have certain punctuations that are needed for things like the DOI, the URL. And in addition to these two, one final source that may be useful is I'm okay with using Purdue OWL. Not everyone is. Like I said, you really do need the APA style manual. If you take shortcuts, you will inevitably have some of the details, some of the specifics that are a little bit off. Because of that, then you're going to potentially have points deducted. I'm not as picky as some, but I am pretty picky about references and in-text citations. So if we want to go in, there's information here about in-text citations. Again, the style blog didn't specify what do you do when there's 2, when there's 3. This helps to give you an introduction fairly quickly to, well, how do I deal with when there's more authors? Additionally, we can see some references. You're largely pulling articles, so you might want the reference and how to create a reference for an article. And this walks you through an example where you have 3 authors, where you have the authors, This is the initials, so first initial, middle initial for each author, the year, title of the article, which is not italicized, title of the periodical, which is italicized, volume number. The issue number, you really only need the issue number if the page continues from one to the next. So that can be important for certain reasons. And then you can see examples here of review articles and different types of resources and how to cite those properly. As with the in-text citations, there are rules about how to do it when there's two, when there's three. And so if you click on authors, you can see when there's a single author, how do you do it? When there's two authors, when there's 3 to 20, how do you do it? And then when there's more than 20, and you can see here, we use ellipses to basically indicate, hey, I had to cut some of these because there was just so many. And so from this, you should have a general sense of where to find the information. Again, I'm not going to waste too much time on the video, but at the same time, you can see how this would allow you to fairly quickly find the information that you need. Because if you need to do a single author, for instance, you can just come back to this resource, look at this as your example, and then go, okay, I need the individual's name, comma, initial. And if there's a first and middle, you do need to include both, the year that it was published, and then in this case, it looks like a book, right? So the book is italicized. This example here is more of a journal article, so we have two individuals. There is an ampersand between the two individuals. Importantly, there's a comma in front of the ampersand. We have the title of the article, and then in italics we have the journal, comma, volume. The issue number, again, is not needed in some cases. You need to look into the APA style manual to look at when you need it, when you don't need it. Comma, the page numbers. It is important. This is actually an in dash, so you need to look up how to do those. The APA style blog actually has a good discussion of when to use in dashes, hyphens, em dashes, and then there's the DOI. This is the new DOI, so you do need to do it as a website, so a link, so that you can more quickly get to the article, or at least the reference to the article, using the DOI. In the older edition, the DOI was set up in a way that it wasn't a hyperlink, and this is actually a little bit more efficient. It actually will slowly make it also easier on you, because you can link from one article to the next article or to a reference from that article really quickly this way, which is nice. That should give you the basics. Again, what I'm really trying to do is familiarize you with these resources so that you can then use them. If you have questions about the detail, feel free to use the discussion boards in order to talk about the assignment, how to do these things. If there's a specific type of citation that's a little bit tricky and you don't think it's adequately addressed in the APA style manual, once you've looked in there, if you don't see it, then feel free to post on the discussion board. The only reason I care about you using the APA style manual is, again, the more familiar with it, then the easier it will be next time. So I'm teaching you a skill. If I just always hand you the answer, you don't actually learn how to do it on your own. One day, you're going to do your own independent research project possibly, or you're going to have to write up something in a class where the professor's not giving you all these resources. You want to make sure you're practicing, familiarizing yourself with these resources, and then it'll make it easier later on down the road.